super fun, and all about artisan cheese and more to melt your peaceful heart and toast your peaceful life. Coming to you from the Appalachian Mountains of southwestern Virginia, this is the Peaceful Heart Farmcast.
Hey, this is Scott Hall from Peaceful Heart Farm, and you are listening to the Peaceful Heart Farmcast.
Hello, everybody. Melanie Hall here. Hope you're doing well. The conversation today and every day revolves around the value of tradition, traditional homestead living, traditional raw milk products, and artisan cheese. Topics discussed here are designed to create new perspectives and possibilities for how you might add the taste of tradition to your life. It is harvest season. I'm overwhelmed with tomatoes. Bumper crops are coming in at a time when I don't really have time to address them. What's a homesteader to do? Well, that's today's topic. And welcome, new listeners. Welcome back, veteran homestead-loving regulars. Thanks for tuning in today. I appreciate you all so much. You make this podcast happen. I am so excited to share with you what's going on at the farm this week. Let's start with the cows. Well, we have to make a decision. We had to make a decision. It was a tough decision, but sometimes that's what happens on a homestead. This is the first year that we have milked Cloud. She is only 3/4 Normande, and the last quarter is Angus. And because of those genetics, she does not produce near the amount of milk that the others do. Additionally, she kicks. I mean, she really kicks. And she is very quick. Scott has received many injuries over the past few weeks, maybe a couple of months. And she didn't start out that way. When we started milking her, she was fine with it, no problems. Then her hoof started growing very long, and she was limping a bit. It was kind of awkward for her. We talked to the vet, and it's not a simple thing to trim a cow's hoof. So long story short, she began kicking when Scott would get anywhere near her back leg on that side. Fine. It's just as easy to work from the other side. And that has worked for quite a few weeks. But recently, she started kicking again. And now we're out of sides from which to work. The end result of the long hoof was that it actually broke off before we found anyone to take care of it. But I don't really want to try milking her on that side. She is just too skittish now. We tried everything to make her more comfortable, and nothing worked. In fact, it only got worse and worse and worse. It has gotten so bad that we simply cannot milk her anymore. Scott cannot even get the inflations on her. And at this point, she's become useless as a producing part of our homestead, and she'll have to go. It won't be right away, but the decision has been made. She's been with us since 2012. But her future looks like this. She will have a calf in the spring. We have no intention of trying to milk her. We hope she has a heifer calf. That will at least add something. Anyway, she's already pregnant, and so her calf will stay with her just as Luna did until weaning. Usually we bottle feed all of our calves, but what happened with her last year was she didn't give birth until after we had dried up all the other cows. It was like somewhere in late November. Basically, she gave birth in our off season, and we don't milk in the winter. And we knew she would not produce a lot of milk anyway. You know, you could tell her udder's just not that big. She gives about 2 gallons a day. We did find that out by milking her. So that's not really very much, for our purposes. Anyway, so last winter, we just left her and Luna to do their thing with each other. Then when we started back up with milking in the spring, Luna was 5 months old, and we weaned her from Cloud and put Cloud into the milking rotation. And as I said, everything was fine in the beginning. She had no problem. But now, well, every animal must add something to the homestead. We only have so much grass for the cows. So they all must produce calves, but more importantly, they must produce milk. Every one of them we need to best utilize that grass. And then they need to be comfortable being milked. Okay, enough of that. What about the sheep? Well, we have our flock ram and several young boys running around together with the young bulls that we're growing out. And they needed to be moved to another paddock. So it was easy enough to move the bulls to another paddock, but the sheep just kept running in circles. The way we have pasture number 5 set up is with an area at the end that's kind of like a funnel. And the funnel leads to the corral area or mainly to the travel lane. It goes directly to the travel lane, and then the corral is right off to the side. And so that travel lane leads to all the other fields. And every time Scott got them down the hill and headed in the right direction, they would stop just a few feet from going into the funnel. I mean, it's quite wide, maybe 12 feet or so. It's not like they were cramped or felt like they were being, cornered. It's quite open through there. But they were having none of it. They quickly circled around behind Scott, and he had to start over again. Go over the hill, round them up again, drive them up and over the hill, down the other side to the funnel. He did that about 4 times before giving up. So the next day, I tried to help. First, we moved 2 of the donkeys, Sweet Pea and Johnny, over there because the sheep will easily follow the donkeys. They are very aware that these are their protectors. And sure enough, we moved the donkeys over the hill, connected them with the sheep, and then turned the whole crew around. And the sheep immediately followed the donkeys. They followed them all the way over the hill down the other side. Sweet Pea and Johnny immediately went into the funnel and into the travel lane. The sheep stopped dead and then began looking for an escape. I don't know why they didn't want to go down the travel lane, but I decided immediately that repeating this 3 or 4 more times was not what I wanted to do with my morning. So we gave up, and Scott began thinking up Plan C. If the 2 of us can't do it, then there needs to be another plan. So Plan C is currently in operation. There's a gate between paddock 5 and 6. It hasn't been used in several years. Scott opened it up, and we hope they will move over to the next field on their own. We'll check in a day or 2. If they've not moved, we will again try to herd them. Perhaps it will work this time. That gate is nowhere near the travel lane funnel, but you can't really tell what will happen. Sheep are notorious for running right by an open gate without seeing it. Okay, now it's time for quail talk. Are you ready? Tomorrow, the eggs that are in the incubator go into lockdown. And just a short refresher on what that means, I open the incubator, take all 80 of the eggs out of the automatic egg turner, and lay them on the bottom of the incubator. The cover goes back on, not to be lifted until 3 days after the first chick hatches. Saturday is the day we expect to hear the first peeps. This never gets old. Every birth is an event on our homestead. With the cows, the sheep, and the goats, it happens once per year. But with the quail, it happens quite a few times per year. Every couple of months, we are starting a new batch of eggs. I have to say one more thing about the quail. The current batch thriving in the penthouse are quite rambunctious, more so than the last 2 batches. It is consistent that the first few days that they are up there, every time I open the door, some of them try to jump out. They don't know they're jumping out. They just jump and out the door they go. Sometimes they just walk off the edge. It's quite comical sometimes. Once they jump out or fall out, I have to go catch them up and put them back in the cage. And with the first few batches, they stopped jumping out after 4 or 5 days. They learned about their new environment and where the, quote, safe places were located, and I would open the cage, and they would run there, straight to the back of the cage or into the box on the side. The current group has a few slow learners. Just yesterday, in the pouring rain, I opened the cage door, and out jumped one of the hens. Well, it was actually one of those cases where she hopped forward like she was going to go around me, only there was no floor under her, and she fell to the ground. It's one of those comical things. They don't realize that there's no floor in front of them. Anyway, and they flutter down. It's not like they're hurt when they fall down. But even though it was raining, I had gone out without any rain gear. Scott had the rain poncho as he was bringing in the cows from the field. And the rain would pour down, and then it would lighten up for a while, then pour down again. And I was out working with the quail during a time when it had lightened up. only it started up again before I finished my tasks. And I was just going to deal with it, quickly get back inside. But then the hen got out. That was my last task before I go inside, is to make sure they have food and water up there. So Scott was right next door now, undercover in the milking shed. So I went over and confiscated the rain poncho and headed back out to catch up that hen. Now she's missing in action. And being a quail, her coloring makes her blend in with the environment. So I'm slogging around in the rain and the mud, trying to scare her into moving so I could see her. It took a bit of time, but I finally located her, scooped her up, deposited her back into the safety of her cage. I hope she wasn't too upset. The hens are reaching an age to start laying eggs. I expect to see the first one in the next few days. But stress like that can cause a hen to stop laying eggs for a few days. So likely for a first-time layer, it would delay laying eggs also. We'll see. Okay, it is harvest season. And what do I mean by that? Haven't I been harvesting veggies for quite a while? Well, yes, I have. But prior to the harvest season, it was a batch of beans here, a batch of peas there, lots of peppers on the next day, and so on. It was all spread out, and just a little bit of this and a little bit of that. The current situation is that the sunflowers needed to be harvested before the birds found them and before the seeds started falling out all over the ground. The green beans and the crowder peas put on a bumper crop that needed to be picked. The fall potatoes needed to be planted, and the tomatoes. The hundreds and hundreds of lovely tomatoes steadily ripened on the vines. And I just canned 13 quarts of tomato juice from before. That was 2 5-gallon buckets full of tomatoes. I talked about that last week. They literally got canned yesterday. I had them cored, cooked, and run through the food mill within a day. Oh, wait a minute. I take that back. I got them to the cooked stage on day 1. So I got them cored and cooked. And then I put them in the fridge overnight and then ran them through the food mill the next day. And then I stored the resulting juice in gallon jugs in the kitchen refrigerator. 5 of them, 5-gallon jars of tomato juice. I started with nearly 5 gallons of juice, but I cooked it down yesterday to about 3.5 gallons before getting it in the jars and into the water bath canner. Those gallon jars were in the fridge for a couple of days too. So the whole project took quite a while, 5 or 6 days, I think. There were so many other things going on and that juice just sat in the fridge 2 days, maybe 3. I lost track. Anyway, the sunflowers got harvested, some of them, and maybe a couple dozen of them, and they are so gorgeous. I'm so pleased with this project, done simply for the pleasure of it. It truly was and is fun. Today, Scott got the flower heads tied together in batches of 3 and then they're hung up to complete the drying process. And there are a lot more out there waiting to be cut. That's on the to-do list. Still, again, whatever. And what else is on that to-do list? Picking green beans and crowder peas again. I just canned 8 quarts of green beans today from a bunch we picked a few days ago. We picked crowder peas, but we ate those. And these are bumper crops, and they're not quite as big as earlier in the season. And I sold all of the earlier crops that I had at the farmer's market. So these are the first green beans that I've canned. And I may get a few cans of crowder peas. We shall see. I fully expect to get another 8 or 10 jars of green beans to can. The Mexican bean beetles have finally arrived, but the beans are already set. I just need to go pick them before they get too big. And the crowder peas will dry on the vine if I wait too long. So that's for tomorrow. And then the big task for tomorrow is picking the tomatoes. And this is the overwhelming part, the heart of harvest seasoning. As I said, I finally got the juice canned from the first batch. And today I got the second batch, again, 2 5-gallon buckets of tomatoes ready for the food mill. They've been cored, cut into pieces, and cooked for about 20 minutes. It requires 2 5-gallon stainless steel pots to get them to this stage, and those pots will go into the refrigerator tonight, just as the previous batch did. And I was surprised that I didn't lose more of those tomatoes. Last week, I talked about picking them just as they began to ripen, right? And so I had a lot of them on the shelves ripening. to finish ripening there. And so 2 or 3 days ago, I needed to get started on the batch that I finally got to today. I knew some of them were rotting. I just didn't have the time to get to them yesterday or the day before. Picking up meat from the processor, 2 trips, getting that ready for customers to pick up, vending at the farmer's market, the sunflowers, the green beans, the crowder peas. The days slip by so fast. So while all of this is going on, the tomatoes still out in the garden, kept getting ripe. I haven't had time to pick them. They're ripening on the vine. This morning I was out giving the calves their bottles. While they are joyfully sucking down their liquid nectar, I'm gazing over at the garden. And what do I see? Hundreds and hundreds of dark orange and red tomatoes. I'm going to estimate 5-gallon buckets at least. I think I'm probably underestimating at this point. There could be twice that amount. We shall see tomorrow. They will be picked tomorrow. Well, at least some of them will be picked tomorrow. I'll let you know what happens with that once I've gotten out there and made a dent in them. I only have so much shelf space to store them, and I only have so much time in the day to process them, and I already have my 2 5-gallon pots full of tomatoes that still need to be processed. Anyway, so tomorrow is another big day in harvest season. I'll be picking the green beans, crowder peas, tomatoes. Someday, those red beans and white beans will get picked. They are dried on the bush at this point. The only danger there is getting wet enough and for long enough that they begin to sprout in their pods, which they can do. They're dried beans. I mean, you can plant them in the ground. So maybe I can get them day after tomorrow. We shall see. And those beautiful sunflowers need to be cut again, too. Well, that's it for today's podcast. Short and sweet. I've got to get back to those tomatoes. I need to get them in the refrigerator. And once I've got to change the settings on the big fridge. It's really a freezer with a special temperature control, and right now it has been converted into an actual freezer for the beef that passed through here from Saturday to today. There's still some meat in there that will get moved to another freezer, and I will get my produce refrigerator back. The tomatoes in their stainless steel pots will go in there overnight. Oh yeah, well, I mean, when will that project get completed? I don't really know, but I do know it will get done. Harvest season, when everything comes in at once, is a very busy time, but I just want to mention how rewarding it is for me, and it only lasts for a short time before we head into the relatively slower season of winter, and that's a well-deserved break from the madness. The joy of growing, harvesting, and preserving our own food is a huge reason why we do what we do here on the homestead. Yeah, it's a lot of hard work, and it is so worth it. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hop over to Apple Podcasts, subscribe, give me a 5-star rating and review. Also, please share it with any friends or family who might be interested in this type of content. It is absolutely the best way to get the word out. Thank you so much for stopping by the homestead. And until next time, may God fill your life with grace and peace.